Now, when the reactor first started up, none of the structure was here. And in fact, this ledge down here wasn't there either. But fast neutrons are darn hard to stop. And so when they cranked this reactor up after a brief survey, they realized that he's going to take more shielding. So they kept adding shielding here. They even end up shielding up here as well. But if you took this off, you'd be looking at the top of the reactor tank. And you see the fuel rods had, the active part was only the bottom portion, even though they were 9 feet long. They're about 3/8 inch in diameter. And now when we thought we were shut down and it didn't matter, we'd go to EBR-2 anyway, we were quickly told, oh, you're not going to walk away from an unanswered question. You got to know what happened. And so this reactor was rebuilt to find out what happened to it. By this time we had better methods to test this very same thing as well. You see, we were kind of tickling the dragon's tail, sneaking up on power to look and try to find out what the time constants were for that positive temperature coefficient. And if we'd gotten that, we could perhaps find something in the reactor where it made some sense. That was the plan. After that, with the help of Hans Bethe, do you know who Hans Bethe is? He's a Nobel Prize winner at Cornell University. He was also involved in the atomic bomb work. He notified us that there was much easier ways to test for the time constants, and it involves you oscillate the reactor very gently, and you look for resonances, and you look for these resonances for different speeds or different oscillation frequencies, and you can find the time constants without tickling the dragon's tail. So anyway, we had to rebuild the reactor. But now, the old reactor, you can see one diagram. The far one is the way it was. The one to the right, you see, is going back into place, but it's quite a different reactor. It uses these kind of fuel sub-assemblies rather than the larger plates between. So when we rebuilt the reactor, it didn't have the positive temperature coefficient. I still want to know the answer. So we start rebuilding these X tubes here to make it look more and more like what it was in the old reactor, and they finally narrowed it down. So we know it was the spacer plate that supported the reactor just above the core and just below the core. And so what you have is these rods that are sticking down. You know that the reactor is going to be hotter in the center than in the outside edge. And if you increase the temperature, it's going to get hotter in the center faster than it does in the outside edge. And when you heat the rods on the inside, they're going to bow a little bit together. That's positive coefficient.
That made the reactor run faster.
No, yeah, that makes it go. That makes the reactor go faster, and it's pretty fast acting. But there's a big 2-inch plate that the rods went through above and below the reactor. Now it's going to get heated on the bottom more than on top. And if it heats on the bottom, it's going to bow downward. It's going to make the rods spread apart. And that's going to be a negative. But this is a big, heavy plate. It's slow to act. Has a time constant of almost a minute. I can't remember what they came up with, but anyway, if you took the two together, the reactor was nice and well behaved. Separate them, you have this situation where the reactor, if you change coolant flow, is separated into two coefficients. Okay, you can look down on there and you can actually see the top of the reactor tank. But of course, all that was lifted off. And you can see from these diagrams over here, originally this plate is laminated with masonite, I think it is, because you see it's a moderator, and so it's alternated with steel and masonite. And it was the first plate we put down on top of the reactor when we needed to cool the amount of radiation coming out of it. This is the outer blanket, and the big hole in the bricks is where the safety rods and the control rods both came up through there. This is looking down on, this is the reactor after it was rebuilt, but lots and lots of thermocouples. This is what the reactor looked like originally, and that's doggone near full scale, I believe. And I mentioned the plug. There's the plug right there. It's one of the first things that drops out when you go through a scram.
The plug?
Yeah, it's safety plug.
Okay.
It's a conical shaped part of the outer blanket.
Oh, I see it.
It just drops out. But now, you see this, who we got here? Well, on the right is Ralph Rice. He was significantly involved in the redesign. He was not here in the early days of the reactor. On the left is Jay Barrow. He's the one who was the machinist. But
with a hat?
Yeah, he did not. And he's the local guy. But I'm sure this is not a real brick.
They tell me it is.
Is it?
I'm not
It
sure.
could be. But if it's real, it weighs over 100 pounds.
Yes, it's right around 100, just above. So this little metal part behind the circle, is that just to fit them together, or what is that for?
I don't remember it having any other significance than that. The coolant, of course, was well. You see, there's still something wrong. You see those?
Yeah, because they don't look alike.
They don't look alike. Those are coolant holes, and this doesn't have the coolant holes.
Oh, okay.
And we did have brick failures. And when we'd find it, the brick, when a little bit of, if you had any leaks, see, these were contained. This is stainless steel clad here. You're not looking at uranium there.
Right.
It would rupture on a corner or something like that. And it oxidizes quickly, especially at high temperature. Uranium is pyrophoric. It expands and would distort the shape of the cup, and our control rod might bind up or something. And we would go in there, and we had a way of taking the outer blanket into the next room downstairs. Maybe you notice there's 2 cells down there. And disassemble it and put another one back in. Now, there was a little concern there because this is where the breeding takes place.
In the blanket?
In the blanket, yeah. And that means there should be some plutonium in it. We never, ever were able to detect any alpha emission. For you, plutonium is an alpha emitter. And if you see alpha, you know you got some plutonium around, or one of the few other, strontium-90, for example. And it's by itself not serious, but it's terrible if you ingest it. In fact, it's what makes plutonium so unacceptable. It's an alpha emitter. An alpha emitter is a large particle. It's actually the content of a helium atom minus the electrons is what it is. It's 2 neutrons and two protons is what it is. It's comparatively heavy. And you can stop it as a radiation easily, but if it gets out in the air and if you ingest it, that's a whole other matter. And so the danger from plutonium is not that the radiation is bad. Alpha is not a dangerous thing by itself. It's dangerous if you should ingest anything of that alpha emitter, because then it's real serious then. So plutonium is an alpha emitter, uranium is not.